Usually I start these off with a pun, but I really just don't. We just don't have one right now. So I guess you could say that the streak has been pun done. Welcome everyone back to the Hungry Heathen. If you watched the other video before this one, it's going to delve into some explanations as to where the actual fuck I've been and what's been going on. So if you did watch the other one, then you know we're not cooking today. We're gonna just kind of ease back into things and see if the issues that I had with the last video I made are still there. All of that stuff. Ignore the mess on the fridge behind me. It kind of just becomes another shelf when you're limited on space. But that being said, we are going to be reading from the Poetic Edda, like our last story time. And this story we are reading is called Volund Vita, or The Escape of Volund the Smith. Now, as I've said before, this is poetry. This is medieval poetry. It kind of sucks to read, but I think the stories are important. Like the last one we read, The Theft of the Hammer. And eventually when we get through this, I'd like to move on to the prose Edda. Realistically, I also feel like we started in the middle of this for some goddamn reason. But I want to eventually cover the Havamal, but I know it's been covered by another pagan YouTuber before, so I really don't want to step on his toes without watching any of Wolf's videos on it and make sure like I'm not doing something that's already been done. Not that he would be upset about that. From what I've gathered in my interactions with Wolf online and all that stuff, he seems like he's a pretty decent guy, but I still don't want to step on toes. So, that being said, The Escape of Volund the Smith. Nidhuth was the name of a king in Sweden. He had 2 sons, a daughter named Bothvild. There were 3 brothers, sons of King Finni. One was named Slagfinn, the other Egil, and the third Volund. They skied and hunted, and when they came to Ulfthar, they made themselves houses there. There's a lake called Ulfsja there. Early in the morning, they found 3 women at the lake shore who were spinning thread. There were swan skins near them, since the women were Valkyries. 2 of them, daughters of King Hlothr, and these were Hlaguth, the Swan White, and Herver the Wise. The third was Olrun, daughter of Kiar, king of France. The men took these 3 women home with them. Egil married Olrun, Slagfinn took Hrathguth, and Volund took Herver. They lived like this for 7 winters, but then the women left them in order to visit battlefields and never came home again. Egil and Slagfinn skied away to search for their wives, but Volund stayed home in Ulfdalir. He was, as far as men know, the most capable with his hands of all the people in the old sagas. King Nidhuth had him seized, and this poem is about that. Women flew from the south through Mirkwood, those young Valkyries who choose men's fates. These southern ladies paused to rest on the lake shore. They spun and weaved precious threads. Egil took one for his wife. He took that beauty in his embrace. Slagfinn took Hlagluth, clad in swan feathers, and the third, their sister, took Volund's handsome neck in her embrace. Afterwards, they stayed for 7 winters, but in the 8th, they had become anxious, and in the 9th, they had to depart. The ladies yearned for Mirkwood. Those Valkyries were eager to judge the wars. The sharp-eyed archer Ekel and his brother Slagfin came home from hunting and found their homes empty. They went in and out and looked around, but finally Egil skied east to look for Orhrun. Slagfin skied south to look for Hlagluth. But Volund sat alone in Ufdalir. He worked gold and colorful jewels. He assembled rings and strung them on ropes. In this way he waited to see whether his lady would return. Neathuth learned this, the lord of Nyari. He heard that Volund was alone in his valley. He sent men in the night wearing well-made armor. Their shields glimmered in the light of the waning moon. They dismounted at Volund's doorstep and went inside his vast home. They saw Volund's golden rings, several hundred together strung on a rope. They took them in hand and then put them back, but stole a single one before they stepped out. Then the keen-eyed archer came home. He had traveled a long way that day. Volund had started to roast the meat of a brown bear. The kindling burned and the dry wood burned. The wind-dry logs burned and it warmed Volund. Volund the elf sat on the bearskin and counted his rings, but noticed one missing. He thought it must be Herva, his wife. He thought she had come back and taken the ring. He sat waiting for her so long that he had fallen asleep, and when he awoke, he was bound in chains. He saw the heavy chains restraining his hands and on his feet. There were also solid locks. He called out, "Who are the kings who have put chains on me, and who has tied me up?" Neathuth, lord of Nyari, gave him an answer. "Volund, you crafty elf, where did you find our treasures in your valley?" Volund said, "It was hardly such a hoard as Sigur's gold. My home was not near the mountains of the Rhine, I remember. That we used to have more when we were a happy family at home in Ufdalir. Hlathguth and Herva were daughters of Hrolfr. Orun, Kjar's daughter, was a cunning sorceress." Nithuth's queen came into the magnificent hall. She stood proudly on the floor and spoke, "This man who came from the woods will not be happy." King Nithuth gave his daughter the gold ring he had taken from Volund. He himself carried Volund's sword, and the queen said, "Volund shows his teeth every time he sees that sword. When Bothvild wears that ring in his presence. His eyes are as cruel as a glistening snake's. Cut his sinews, rob his strength, and put him away in Severstoth." So Volund's hamstrings were cut. He was placed on a small island next to the land, which was called Severstoth. There he made all kinds of treasures for the king, and no one dared to come to the island except the king himself. Volund said, "My sword shines on Nithuth's belt, the sword I sharpened, the sword I alone, the greatest smith, could make, the sword I hardened with my unmatched skill. Now that glistening sword is always far from my sight, since Nithuth will not bring that treasure to my workshop. His daughter, Bothvild, also wears a treasure, never meant for her, my bride's golden ring." Volund worked, never sleeping, constantly swinging his hammer. He thought of a daring plot to foil Nithuth. The Nithuth's two young sons, the two boys, came to see Volund's treasures on the island of Severstoth. They came to the treasure chest. They asked for the keys. They realized Volund's skill when they peered inside. The boys saw many ornaments, all of them made of gold and gems. Volund said, "Come back alone, just you two, the day after tomorrow, and I will give all this gold to you if you do. Don't tell the ladies. Don't tell the men. Don't tell anyone at all that you're meeting with me." Early on the appointed day, one boy said to the other, "Let's go see the rings." So the two boys came and asked for the keys. They realized Volund's skill when they peered inside. He cut off the heads of those young boys and hid their bodies under his bellows, but he took their skulls and scalped them, set them with silver, and he sent them as cups to Nithuth. And from the eyes of these young boys, he made jewels for their mother, Nithuth's wife, and Volund made ornaments from the teeth of her own two brothers for Bothvild, Nithuth's daughter. Bothvild praised a ring Volund had made, and she told him it was broken. "And I don't dare to tell it," she said, "to anyone but you." Volund said, "I'll repair it so that your father on his throne will look at it, and to him and to your mother it will look even better, and you'll think so too when you wear it." He gave her beer, for he could easily outdrink her, and finally she sat in his chair and she slept. Volund said, "Now I have avenged the wrongs done to me, all except one of the most wicked. I have done well. I wish I were on my feet, the ones cut from me by the wicked men of Nithuth." But then, laughing, Volund launched himself into the air. Both Vid left Both Vild wept as she left the island. She wept for her lover's departure and her father's anger. Volund saw where Nithuth's queen stood outside and went into the hall. Volund perched atop the wall and said, "Are you awake, Nithuth, lord of Nyari?" Nithuth said, "I am awake. I have no joy. I barely sleep since my son's death. Your cold actions have chilled me. Now I wish I had never dealt with Volund." "Tell me, Volund, you crafty elf, what kind of fate did my sons meet?" Volund said, "First, you must swear many oaths. Swear by a ship's board, by a shield's edge, by a horse's withers, by a sword's blade, that you will not harm my lover, nor cause her death, even if my new bride is a woman of your kin, even if she bears my child inside your own hall. Then, go to the workshop that you forced me into. There you'll find bags full of blood. I cut your boys' heads off and left their bodies beneath the bellows. And after I scalped them, I took the bear skulls and decorated them with silver before I sent them to you. And after I took out their eyes, I turned them into jewels for your crafty queen. I made jewels from the teeth of those two boys that I sent those to your daughter Bothfield. Now Bothfield walks about pregnant, yes, the only daughter of the two of you." The king said, "You could say nothing more awful to me. I would never torture you worse. There is no man so tall that he could reach you up there, nor so good a shot that he could shoot you down. There where you hang among the clouds, Volund." Laughing, Volund flew up and away and left the joyless Nithuth sitting below. Nithuth said, "Get up, Thackrath, my good servant. Go to my pretty daughter Bothfield. Tell her to come to me in a fine dress, to come talk to her father." The king then said to her, "It is true," Bothfield and Volund said, "that you and he lay together?" She said, "It is true, father. Everything he said to you is true. Volund and I laid together on his island a while. We never should have. I couldn't fight him, father. I couldn't withstand him, father." And there ends the escape of Volund the Smith. Now, the thing about the Poetic Edda is the Poetic Edda is based off of. Actually, you know what? Let me check real quick. Maybe I could. I don't remember what it's called. I know it was a Icelandic poem. But I do know that it is missing parts. The Codex Regius is where it came from. So the Poetic Edda comes from the Codex Regius, which is I believe, set of plates found in Iceland in between the years 800 and 1000, I believe. There are many significant pieces missing, and as anyone who's ever tried to follow this religion can attest to, it's also very difficult to find. Some of it was destroyed during the Christianization of Europe. So the history that we have is what was fortunate enough to make it away from the destruction of our religion by Christians. So some of these stories are going to be incomplete, like that one. Very much, I feel like the way that it ended wasn't the way that it was intended to be ended. So you're going to find some of these stories are complete, some of these stories are not. Eventually, once we get through this, I want to read the Prose Edda, and we're going to move into Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology, because he, being a fiction author with credits like movies such as Coraline and such, he adds a storytale twist to it, which I really like. So, That being said, I believe the next story we read, when I make another video of this, is going to be the Alvismal, or the Words of the All-Wise, which could very much be a story of Odin. But for now, we're going to sign off. I'm glad to be back. Hopefully I don't have any issues like I did with the last time I made a video. As you can see, we've got a couple upgrades. This is a lavalier microphone. You notice it was hanging here the entire time. This should also make it a little bit easier for me to make videos, so I don't have to chase my JLab studio microphone around, which is good if we do videos like this, but cooking videos, not so much. So, that being said, we'll catch you next time.